Happy to kick things off. Hello, everyone. Thank you so very much for joining us this morning from all over the globe. We have folks dialing in from the UK. We have folks joining us from India and folks joining us from the States. So I wanted to thank you all for joining us. For some of us, it's morning, some of us, it's evening, afternoon. So we truly appreciate you joining us, taking time out of your busy schedule to join us for the Agentforce Marketing MC Learning Camp series. JB, next slide. So my name is Gilda Hilaire. I'm Director of Product Marketing from Salesforce, and joining me is JB. She's Marketing Cloud Consultant at Arxient. JB, I'll let you say a few words.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Agentforce series. We are so excited to kick it off with you all. So this is going to be more fun and it's going to be a lot of learning for you all. We have carefully selected all the content and all lined up all the amazing speakers for you. And about me, I lead the Salesforce Bootcamp, Global Bootcamp group. So MC Learning Camp is an initiative to help everyone learn Marketing Cloud and all the umbrella products.
Yeah. And to just to add a couple more words. So when JB and I first discussed this series, we wanted a series that was taught not really by Salesforce, but by community members. I always feel like it's better when community leaders, trailblazers come in and they share how they've learned new software, new platform, the way that they learn and share that with you all, right? And we decided to put this series together with leaders from across the globe that are currently learning best practices and tips and tricks. Technology is changing by the hour, so what better time to learn all that you can learn around Agentforce? So that's why JB and I put this together, and we selected some amazing speakers, which you'll be introduced to later on in the series. So today's the first day for the Agentforce kickoff series. Next slide, JB. So this is the schedule. This is the first part of the series. We're kicking things off today. And then the second series is Data Cloud with Agentforce Lens, which is Matthew Walsh. Matthew Walsh is with Salesforce. We have Agentforce Technical Deep Dive, Agentforce Best Practice, Practical Applications, Architecture 101, an AMA panel. All of these topics, we didn't pick them. We pulled together a group of thought leaders within the community, and we said, if you were to break down Agentforce, how would you break it down? What are some of the areas that you feel, A, have been a bit challenging for our trailblazers to understand, and B, what are some of the tips and best practices? And for those of you who know me, my number one rule is we're not scripting anything. I am anti-scripting, meaning I want you to come in and present how you learn, because that's the only other way that others will learn. I don't want anything scripted. I want you to come in. I want you to share all the things that you've learned, so that our attendees will also learn it. And remember to register for every session. This, because you've joined today, does not mean that you're automatically enrolled to all the other sessions. Most importantly, we want you to chat. So leverage this chat as much as possible so that you can ask us questions. We'll be able to answer it, but you can ask each other questions. And my plan afterwards is to take all this conversation. If there are things that we did not address, we will make sure we address it in the AMA, or we will make sure we address it in the Slack channel. And what we've learned from previous sessions is there are a lot of questions. One was actually asked earlier, will this session be recorded? Yes. Each session is being recorded and will be uploaded to the YouTube at MCLearningCamp. Yes, you can ask questions in this chat window, but just in case we didn't get to your questions today, please join the Slack channel, slack.mclearningcamp.com Slack channel, and we will continue the conversations there. And if you're going to post questions in the Slack channel, please use the hashtag Agentforce_2025. And here's the link below to register for all of these amazing events. Baby?
So I'll be posting the link in the chat shortly. So this is going to be the link where all the events will be published, but there will be a different link for each and every session. So make sure that you register to each and every session separately. And when you join this group, you can search for this group on the Trailblazer community. When you join this group, whenever there is a new event that is published, you will automatically get notified. And we'll be sharing the link to the Ask Me Anything form panel form questions as well. And here's the quick QR code wherein you can scan and post your questions. Any questions that are related to this specific session, please post that in the chat window. And if you think that is not related to this specific session, we can have the experts answer on 2/11, the February 11, on the Ask Me Anything panel. And why we ask this is we will start with the questions that are already filled in. So the questions that are already filled in will have a higher chance of getting answered. So the sooner you fill in, the higher chances of getting the answer.
And what is a
Inspectors, yeah.
session? What is a session without swag? So I do know that the AI certification is free, but I know for some of you, you also want to add other certs to your resume. So throughout the event, we will be giving away Salesforce certification vouchers, which are good for up to exams worth $400, right? Again, I'm going to reiterate, the AI certification is free, that I know, but to add additional certifications to your resume and to support your journey to learn all the amazing platforms within Salesforce, we will be giving away swag. And in addition to that, 3 lucky winners in this first series will win a Moment Marketer bomber jacket. Moment Marketer is the online marketing community where marketers from across the globe can network, ask questions, get updates on future Salesforce events. We will also be sharing that link in the Slack channel. So as I stated, we will be giving away certification vouchers and we will be giving away bomber jackets throughout the series. So hopefully you'll be one of those lucky winners.
Whenever you're joining the event, make sure that you are going to the community page and joining via the join button. Whatever the event that you're trying to join, there will be a join button. You will see only after you RSVP to that event. Only then your attendance will be recorded. And for the swag winners, we are going to pick the regular attendees on the last day, that is on the seventh session in the series. I think that is on 13th of February. So we will pick the winners based on the regular attendance and then active participation. And also we encourage you to share your learnings on the social. We're going to share the tags.
Mhm. So spread the word. What a lot of folks don't realize is these programs are successful because of you, because of the mentions on social, the tags you're using. So what we're asking everybody is share the series with your community, with your colleagues. It's not limited to just people who want to learn Marketing Cloud. This series is open to all. So please use MC Learning Camp, please use Agentforce, and then please use the hashtag Moment Marketer. With that being said, I have nothing else to add to this. I'm looking forward to our 2 presenters today. JV, I'll pass it to you to wrap it up.
And thank you everyone once again for joining this. So we have our wonderful speakers, Jacob and Timo. And it's not just us, it's happening because of the wonderful speakers. They have worked a lot on putting the content together, preparing the agenda, and making sure that we have covered everything, all the ins and outs of the Agentforce. So with this, I will turn it over to Jacob and Timo.
Hey everybody, is Jacob here as well?
You have all the access. If you want to share the screen, you can get going.
Yeah, I was just Jacob said that he would get started, and his section is in the beginning, but let's see if he's joining.
He's
Can
live.
also
Yes. Okay, I gave him permission to share. It should be all good now.
So JB, I'm having a little bit of technical difficulties on my end. Can you give access to my other email address that I provided you? I have to be entered as
Yes.
two different people. So yes, I've
Yes, he
provided an
did it.
agent for myself right now. I'm already way ahead of the game.
All set, Jacob.
All right, great.
or you have a split persona.
Depends on which one. We'll see. All right, can everyone see my screen now that we've gotten through the fun technical mess?
I can
Yes.
see it at least, yeah.
All right, great. So I'll come on, and we've already done a little bit of hellos. So I think, and we've already said thank yous. So let's go into who the heck these people are talking about. But any Salesforce presentation would not be, complete if we didn't say that Timo and I may spend a little bit of time in some forward-looking pieces. So at the end of the day, make all of your purchasing decisions or work through all of the generally available technology within the Salesforce technology stack. And this is going to be fun. So Timo,
Yep.
why don't you go first, and then I'll make sure my screen actually works so I can pull up my video.
Sure. Name's Timo Kovala. I come from Finland, where it's a bit chilly, but not too bad. I feel for you guys in Chicago and Boston. It's not that bad here. I'm a lead architect for marketing and AI solutions in the Nordics at Capgemini. And currently, I'm also a full-time dad. So I'm on parental leave. But since Gilda and JB reached out about this series, it sounded very cool. So wife's actually helping out with the kid at the moment, and I'm with you here today. So really glad to be with you guys. And over to Jacob.
So you can see now I'm pulling up my face on my phone. This is really good. This is my agent. So hello, everyone. Jacob Hayes. I'm a senior manager in the financial services group at Accenture. Been in the Salesforce ecosystem for over a decade, working in marketing cloud, it's adjacent technology, data cloud, and our fun Einstein platform that's shifting and transitioning into Agentforce. So like I said, Timo and I are really looking forward to talking with you all today. We're going to do our best to hit on everything in the time limit that we have. There might be occasions where we'll have to parking lot some of the questions, but that's why we have the Ask Me Anything session later on. So I'm going to go off the camera before my computer and my phone decide to die, and we'll start jumping into the presentation. All right, so I think first things first from our side, we're going to do our best to handle each one of these topics like we talked about. We're going to run through anatomy of an agent, when to look at Agentforce and Data Cloud, use cases, Data Cloud as a digital core, how to set Data Cloud up in a smart way, and how to cope with data. And it'll be a mishmash of Timo and myself talking, and there may be moments where Timo steps in and Jacob steps in as well, but looking forward to presenting with you all. All right, so let's dive in.
Yeah.
So let's dive into what is Agentforce. So I think one of the underpinnings that we want to do with this session is there's a ton of content out there from Salesforce on what Agentforce is. I'll speak for Timo for a second. He obviously can tell me if I'm right, wrong, or indifferent, but we're trying to focus this in a different manner where we're not going to rinse and recycle content that you've seen already out in the ecosystem. We're trying to hit you guys with our personal points of view on what is Agentforce and how to leverage the technology and where it's going as a technology as well. And so,
So do
but we,
take this with a bit
yeah,
of grain of salt or something, because it's somewhat opinionated at times.
yes, no good consultants aren't opinionated in some manner.
Yeah.
So let's start with what is the underpinning of what is Agentforce. Now, I'm not going to read the words to you guys on the screen, but what I want to be able to articulate, and I'll say it in the next slide as well, is Agentforce is starting to close the gap for the Salesforce technology of what customers are expecting and what they're expecting from AI. So not only are we looking at the forward-looking statements of going to autonomous AI agents SDRs or specific service agents instead of chatbots and etc. But we're looking to start getting into human touch instead of the point and click chatbots that we're all aware of that move through if-else statements and get us to fixed results. Now we're trying to see how can we use the ability of these agents to do flexible dynamic conversations and also address multiple complex topics. What does that mean? It means we've been moving in pace of innovation. So we've talked about chatbots with those fixed rules. Copilots were a thing. Copilots still are a thing, everyone. So this is where the hot takes start to come into play. These copilots have not left the industry, especially within Salesforce, just because we don't like a naming convention structure of it. How we're still going to be leveraging copilots is in a different manner. So you can see the smart and tailored assistants in the example of AI and saying, can you tell me about an order? That's a perfect use for Copilot. Now, where Agentforce gets into be very interesting, and hopefully you all, if you want to take some learnings outside of this session, is take a look at the set of tools and suite of agents. There's a lot of really good content on YouTube from Salesforce and the success teams on what does this mean. So what we look at, or myself and Timo, feel free to chime in if there's any differences for you, is I like to think of this as agents don't just assist, but they're starting to take action. And that's where the pain has shifted between copilots to Agentforce. Copilots were great to do. Yeah, copilots were great in doing. No, you're good, Timo. We want this to be.
I think how I like to view it is that agents have agency, meaning that they have the right to act either autonomously or semi-autonomously based on what they hear, what they interpret.
Yeah, I mean, to add to that point, an agent is like a human being who is net new to your company. Now, that human being might be an intern. They might not know a ton about your organization or know all of the different rules and processes, but that's why we teach them. I have a 4-year-old in my household, so sometimes I like to think of the agents that we're building as 4-year-olds. Unless you train them and teach them on what they're supposed to be doing, they'll be all over the place. And not in a bad way. It's just they don't know sometimes what the right guardrails and pieces to do. So that's where this continuum is moving. But to go a step deeper and always double click, I like to look at the anatomy of an agent in 2 separate pieces. A scope layer on this left-hand side, it's a lot of words, so I'll summarize this. And then on the right-hand side, a capability layer. Within the scope layer, all of these words are basically talking about this. Who is the agent? What work will they do? And more importantly, what work will they not do? And all of this is described in natural language. So instead of us creating complex logic trees within chatbots in the past, we're starting to do this as a natural language typing out of the specific pieces that need to be done. And the specific pieces that need to be done are the right-hand side, meaning your prompts, your actions, your flows. All of what we work on, especially with flows and different declarative tools within the Salesforce ecosystem, are leveraged within Agentforce. And so I think there's a couple pieces that I didn't get to add on this slide because there's a lot under the hood of Agentforce. One, there's an LLM that helps facilitate and basically assist with all of the items listed on the right-hand side for the capabilities. And also, how are we exposing the agent? And what channel is that going to be on? Is that going to be on an Experience Cloud site as a, what we would similarly look at as a chatbot? Or if you've been following along, is that the help.com for Salesforce right now, and it's Agentforce bot, or it's Agentforce agent itself. But to wrap up this section, I want to then, before we hand it over to Timo, say, we need to rethink on what we believe and how Agentforce will fit into our workforce. Meaning, how is Agentforce going to fit into the technology stack that we're implementing for clients, or if you're a client side, the technology stack you already own? I like to think of this in 2 different ways. We need to think about the jobs that need to be done, which humans will have to do. And we also need to think of as the jobs humans don't want to do. And I like to think as a personal agent or an individual agent being able to assist me. So if I'll give you an example. If I was a sales rep inside an organization, I would love a personal SDR or a personal sales development associate who would be able to help me understand what are the right leads, what are the right actions to take on a day-to-day basis, and if possible, handle the minutia of outreach to the potential hundreds of clients. I'll go even further with one example and hand it over to you, Timo. Is when I first started my career, I worked in a call center where I was making 100 calls a day, working as a BDR. It was a lonely, lonely experience, and sometimes only talking to 1 or 2 people a day. It would be amazing if I could have an agent who augments my time so I could speak to 4, maybe 6 people a day. Those are the productivity gains and the value you should be looking at with Agentforce, aligning those humans, agents, data, and CRM. But Timo, over to you on when to look at
Thanks,
Agentforce and Data
Jacob.
Cloud.
So Jacob just provided a great overview on a sort of general level what agents are, what Agentforce is. So we are all marketers here, and this is a marketer boot camp. So if you go to the next slide, I want to go a bit deeper into what this means for marketing. And this is actually a topic that Salesforce hasn't yet been covering that much officially, because the focus so far with Agentforce has been in the first use cases in sales, online shopping, and customer service. But marketing is equally affected by agentic AI, which is the general term or the general sort of trend, let's say industry trend, that Agentforce is a part of as well. So what this means, I'm not going to go into all of these parts, but it's part of a continuum. So data-driven marketing has been around for a long time, and it's taken different shapes. It's been relying on different types of data, different kinds of artificial intelligence, and so forth. And what we're now seeing is the beginning of autonomous marketing. What this means is that you can actually hand over parts of marketing orchestration to agents. And meaning that's not only, let's say, picking the right channel for the message or picking the right content version for the customer, but actually picking the right customers to receive the right messages. So it's like Jacob said, it's a net new employee. Basically, you get a marketing assistant helping you out with deciding how to do marketing and to whom. And here are a couple of examples of what that means. So you get automated next best actions. And you get also AI-driven segmentation. So you can use agents to actually build your segments, which has been very time-consuming job if you've used, for example, the old school exact target nowadays marketing cloud engagement. So you would have to use SQL and data extensions and so forth. So it's great thing and a great boon for marketers that we get these agents helping out with these tasks. Now, Jacob, you can go to the next slide. So here are just some of the sort of benefits that you get when you add Agentforce into the mix when you're doing marketing. So one key, let's say, pain point or a task that a lot of marketers face is lead qualification, opportunity qualification, and it's really I haven't at least met any marketer who actually likes doing qualification. Of course, it helps a lot your business and helps focus your efforts, but any help that you can get for qualifying the right leads, etc., moving the funnel forward, it's going to help a lot. And it will make your life easier and your work much more fun. And another thing is that marketers are not only overwhelmed with work, they are overwhelmed with data as well and analytics. And interpreting analytics is only getting more difficult by the day and by the year. So agents can actually help you identify key insights from your data, from engagement, campaign metrics, etc. So you don't have to, drill down on every bit of information when your supervisor is asking how the campaigns went and so forth. And this trusted wingman basically ties into the sort of whole co-pilot type use case. But with agents, they are much more than just co-pilots. They don't just give you answers. They can actually take over the sort of the ship that you're steering. So you can pass over the steering wheel to the wingman and have them to do parts of the tasks instead of just telling you what you should be doing. And the fourth thing is that what you actually get with agents as well is a boost towards collaboration and cross-functional sort of working together, which has been the sort of one of the key pain points with marketing in the past, that marketing and sales, marketing and service have been isolated. So anything that helps break down those organizational silos is very welcome. And of course, I mean, ultimately, Agentforce is here to improve your bottom line, and it should have actual sales impact, and it will have if you do it properly. So agents can also help close those crucial marketing leads and ensure that you get as much revenue out of them as possible. Yeah, Jacob, let's go next. Okay, so here are a few signs where you could see that Agentforce could help you. One is that if your organization, or if you are doing lots of repetitive, time-consuming work that has been or can be defined easily, that's for sure something that agents can help with. One is also if your organization has these very complex rule-based automations and marketing journeys that are becoming costly and difficult to keep up to date. That's something that agents can help as well with, so they can actually fix and modify these automations and even create new ones if needed. Third key identifier would be that if there are certain gaps in the customer journey, let's say that for example, that there is no process to hand over leads once they sort of reach a certain stage or so forth. So if there are these kinds of gaps, then agents can jump in and help out and ensure that basically no lead is left unhandled, basically. And also to ensure that the user or customer experience is the best possible. Yeah. Moving on. And me and Jacob will also cover in more detail what you actually need to ensure that Agentforce works the best way possible. But these three things I would focus on if you're planning on adopting Agentforce in your organization. So one is data governance. So you don't have to have perfect data. You will never have perfect data, but you should have a commitment towards data governance, and you should have a plan to ensure that your data is moving to the right direction all the time. So it's getting better over time. So that's what data governance here means. This is a strategic commitment, and if your top level executives are not on board, then that's basically what you should be focusing on, and should be an alarm sign for you that if the executive board is not on board, then they should be in the future. And finally, also, it would be really good to upskill in Agentforce. It's a very different product, very different platform from what you're used to working in Salesforce. So there is a learning curve, and part of it can be tackled with this bootcamp, hopefully. But also, well, of course, me and Jacob are both certified partners, so we have a vested interest in this, but it's really sincere here that you should go at it with a certified partner before starting. You don't want to end up paying for the partner's learning fees, so to speak.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah, and I think the one thing to add to the Timo's last part there is also go at it with a open mindset. I mean, I've had many of conversations, and I'm sure Timo has as well, where we get closed off really quickly because individuals either aren't seeing the growth curve exponentially out in the industry between these co-pilots to agent shift, or people are very nervous about the technology as a whole. And I think Timo's first bullet there on data and data governance is one that's legit, but to his point, you got to start somewhere. And if you just
Yeah.
get into a circular motion of analysis paralysis, you're never going to be able to leverage leading tech in some capacity.
And one thing to add to that before we go forward is open mind means also having a right level of ambition also, because I've also heard a lot of executives think too small of agents, and that's something to avoid as well. That agents have key capabilities that you didn't have with co-pilots or chatbots. But I see that there's a lot of people who are sort of stuck in that sort of, you know, viewpoint
Moment in
that
time.
AI is gonna just help you do your work, and you still have to do that work. But that's not the case.
Yeah, and I think it actually leads well on Timo into there were some questions already in the chat that I'm seeing. It's like, well, what does this look like? What are some examples? And so the screen here, we're going to walk through in this use case section. We're going to go 30,000 foot view, and then we're going to go down to probably the 10,000 foot view level, or maybe even 5 with Timo's example. But I wanted to start with simplistic, and simplistic in a manner of looking at the Einstein platform, data cloud, and Agentforce together in a typical scenario. And a typical scenario that this means is whether you're working with your clients or you're looking at this as an organization, I think we all need to understand you're probably not likely going to jump into AI agents immediately. Now, could you? There are plenty of cases probably where Timo and I have seen this, where people are starting to build out those full-fledged agents, maybe not fully autonomous, but they're getting there. But I think most of the time we likely see an enhancement of data and enabling Gen AI with increasing levels of automation throughout a process. So let's talk about this one a little bit, and I won't belabor the point because I want to make sure that we cover a lot of the cool details we have in the second half of this session, which is if I look at this continuum or this little motion of moving along, starting with a customer account 360, or you could also look at that as, hey, how do I just surface the right insights to my team members in their flow of work, whether that's in a service console, a sales console, or what there were some other examples in the piece in the chat thread, which is how can I just help an approval process as content is being generated? There's a lot of interesting things here of how we surface the data, how we either combine that with custom segments, predictive modeling, and those predictive modeling could be something as simple as, I think on my screen here, I had a couple of data cloud segments with some insights from an AWS S3 bucket, or you can go more complex into predictive models where someone's building in Databricks and bringing the summary of information into Data Cloud. And then most people go, but what does that do for me? Well, typically what that does is in the third step, leveraging Einstein or with an Agentforce, depending on if you're in the Copilot world or if you're starting to dabble into the Agentforce designs, is how does that actually help with productivity? It helps with productivity in a couple of different ways. In a service example, which is not on the screen, a service example would be maybe a custom grounded prompt within the grounded search for knowledge articles that are either living and embedded in my Salesforce CRM instance, or knowledge articles that are living and breathing in S3 bucket that I'm calling into, where I'm not having to throw all of my articles and knowledge articles into Data Cloud, but I can start to vectorize and chunk this. And we'll double click and triple click into vectorization and actually Data Cloud features in a few minutes. But then going down, if we get that information, we can help with prep, or we can help with service replies. How do we then make it actionable? And the actionable step here, which I'll do a little laser pointer if folks are following, is how do we put it into action and put it into flows? And a process that you see on the screen here is just 2 Lightning Web components. One is the next best action custom Lightning Web component, where someone is saying, based off of the unique properties of an individual with CRM, leveraging the data we have within Data Cloud and leveraging the data that we're either pulling through or externally looking out to in our prompts within Agentforce, can we determine the next best action for an individual, whether it's a customized email, customized message prompt on a mobile app, or just moving them into a different case flow within CRM. There's many different ways to push them around into the right process for them. Then, how do we action further? Do we push out content to them? Are we going to do more, specific service replies, or are we going to crawl into this in this, the service side of the house to just say, help me understand the summarization of what's being asked or talked on during this case? Or another personal example, in that call center environment, when I did successfully do something and talk to an individual, I was always asked to create a knowledge article at the end. And if you've ever worked in a call center environment, and I can imagine everyone on this has at least at some point worked in the setting like that before, you're going to say, I hated that part of my job. It would be, I want to finish and then move to the next piece because my SLAs are asking me to do so, and I have KPIs to hit as an individual. But now I got to type out this thing of how I help them, make it into a format that's necessary. This is where we're seeing a lot of people dabble in and having the structured format already established for them as they complete a case and say, just review the knowledge article that we have done a first pass on as the Einstein or Agentforce agent, and then see if you need to tweak. That's a productivity gain. If that typically took an agent, or I say agent, a service rep 15 minutes, can we get them down to 5 minutes? If you extrapolate that across all of your reps, that's huge productivity gains. And then finally, we're looking at autonomous agents. But at the end of the day, to my earlier point, you might not be there yet, but it's okay to build towards this continuum. Now let's go a layer deeper. Timo, you have a really fun use case to show.
Yeah, I was actually replying to few messages about these use cases. So here's an example. This is actually a live use case that we did at a global hackathon. So I can vouch that this is a actually working use case, because this is something that has frustrated me personally, that because it's a new product, new SKU. There aren't that many actual practical use cases. There's a lot of oh, you can do this and that and that, and then person asks, okay, can we see some numbers, some live demos, etc. And then it's not really. But this is actually a real one. So what we did was this email accessibility agent. So email accessibility in short means that people with some limited, let's say, or limitations in, for example, their ability to read or understand, let's say, messages, imagery, text, or some disabilities, that they can still understand easily what you're sending them via email. So this historically has been either an afterthought for a lot of marketers. A lot of marketers haven't been that aware of accessibility, and then companies and marketers that do invest in accessibility often find it difficult to achieve and very expensive, because it is a very, let's say, difficult topic and requires its special area of expertise. But well, I live in the EU. We have GDPR, but we now also have EAA, which means European Accessibility Act. So if you're operating in the Eurozone or European Union, starting from this year, you actually have legal responsibility to, do things more accessible. And this affects email marketing as well. And as an added bonus, this is actually something that comes from Jacob's company, Accenture, this research. So numbers show that companies that do invest heavily in accessibility get lots of more revenue, more net income, and higher profit margins. Now we have few components in this agent. I'm going to show you the solution architecture in just a bit, but just let's go through this list quickly. So there's, of course, emails. That's a given. So we're using Lightning emails, which sit inside the Salesforce Content Management System, CMS. We, of course, have Agentforce in play. We have Data Cloud, which is responsible for calculated insights in the process. We use Flow, so we don't have to actually use Apex or anything like that. We can use declarative means to do the required API integration, which is pretty cool. So admins can do this without having to code things themselves. And then we need a Litmus account. So Litmus is the third-party application that we would be using for increasing the accessibility. Now, let's go to the next slide. Jacob? Yeah, thanks. So things start out with the Lightning Email Builder. Basically, the user, a marketer, meaning you, would start the discussion with an agent while setting up the Lightning email. And then you would ask, like, please, can you check if this email is accessible and provide insights on how to make it more accessible if there are any issues. So what the accessibility agent says is, sure, I will do that. And we have set up this kind of flow action that sends an HTTP call out to Litmus. Basically, it provides the HTML content of that email directly through the API. So Litmus can then check it out and then provide the response to Data Cloud, and then Data Cloud can then work those into calculated insights that then power the agent doing those changes. So it's basically a closed loop. And basically, this is something that in the past you would have to do manually. So basically sending a test email to Litmus and then going into the Litmus user interface and then going through the different, mockups and viewing the results of that accessibility analysis. So it all takes time. It's a very disconnected experience. Do marketers do it every time they build a new email? Probably not. So it's really a time saver, and this makes accessibility accessible from your basic email workflow. So it's pretty cool stuff. At least I think so. Yeah.
I think
But that's
cool.
it.
All right, great. So lots of fun questions. I know Timo and I are taking turns back and forth, even answering stuff in the chat. Feel free to keep asking them. And to JB's point in the beginning of the presentation, if you have a burning question, please ask it to the Ask Me Anything panel that we will do later this session as well, or not this session, within the series. But let's dive in quickly, and I'm making sure we cover everything. This is going to be a blend of Jacob and Timo talking about what is Data Cloud and why is it digital core. So I don't know if a ton of people have seen this little architecture diagram floating around the ecosystem. If you haven't, it's very interesting. Credit to Jordan Sealing out in the Salesforce. I think he's a CTA. He does a lot of really cool things on LinkedIn. Go follow him. And yes, I took some photo credit for him and made my own version of this. So thank you, Jordan. Shout out. But how do we look at Data Cloud as a vision for Agentforce? And why are we referring to it as the digital core? I think one of the first pieces that we all need to be aware of is there are different moments in time of this diagram that relate to Data Cloud, and it relates to Agentforce. So if we look at the unstructured data that we're potentially bringing into Data Cloud, chunking, transcribing, embedding it, and using our vector database, one of the biggest pieces that we talked about with the example in the use case section is how are we leveraging all that unstructured knowledge articles or other areas that don't live and breathe in the Salesforce four walls, but are critical to help sales and service either get additional context about how customers are visually moving through pipelines and conversations they're having on Zoom, Teams, etc., or for service reps, what has been going on with cases and how are we been resolving those. But if we look at the vectoring of that information and embedding it in Data Cloud to be used by agents, we then have to look at how do we retrieve the data. So we talked about hybrid search, prompt and flow retrievers, and I'll double click into each one of these in a second. But that has to be leveraged by agents in some capacity. This is the reason why Data Cloud is the embedding or the actual core of the platform is. In order for us to better utilize that data without doing very complex prompting with Apex calls to external systems, which introduces latency into its product, how can we best leverage Data Cloud in either a skinny methodology method from an implementation or a full implementation? And we'll talk about that in a few minutes as well. And then if we look a little bit more, well, we've talked about generative, but for some reason in all of these conversations, and I'm sure Timo's about to nod, is predictive hasn't gone away. And predictive and generative is where actually the productivity gains and the return on investment happens more and more within generative AI and within AI itself. I got a nod and I got a from Timo.
Yeah,
bringing in
actually,
this,
you're
Timo.
going to talk about RAG. So there's also the term called PAG, which is prediction augmented generation. So that sort of ties in nicely that you can augment the prompts with predictions.
There. Yes, and that was one thing I didn't add, Timo, but maybe that's for the later session in this series. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But yes, how are we going to leverage those predictive models that most enterprise organizations are leveraging, a Vertex AI, a SageMaker, etc. But we want to embed that and move that into Data Cloud, at least from a summary perspective, and leverage it within agents. And then finally, trust is the number one piece. Hopefully you guys have all seen and done some research into the trust layer within Salesforce's four walls and its technology. We're not going to go into what the trust layer is here, but it's very important for you guys to understand while data flows, the masking and security of information within the Agentforce platform. And then how it leverages those either bring your own LLMs, whether it's self-hosted or hosted outside of Salesforce. And then how are we looking at that audit trail and that feedback data, which is another key component of how Data Cloud fits into this model of how do we use Data Cloud and Agentforce together. All right, let's double click into one of the areas, which is RAG and the Atlas engine. So I'll do this as quickly as possible because I see some time. And JB, before we go, do we have until the top of the hour or do we have until 9:15 a.m. Eastern?
We do have until 9:15, Jacob. You can continue.
Okay, perfect. So I won't speak at the fastest pace that I've ever spoken in my life. So that's good. So let's double click into the Atlas reasoning engine because this is pretty new and how it acts as the brain behind this process. And so I think first and foremost, we look at this example, and by the way, this is an example that I had last night, which is why is the light on my Roomba Series i3 blinking red and the app tells me it's an error? Help me. What if we could have a conversation with an agent inside potentially I'm not going to use the company's name, but you get where I'm going with it, within the app and say, tell me a little bit more about what's happening. Once I ask an agent or a rep or someone who's leveraging Agentforce that question, what's happening behind the scenes? So if you follow the little diagram with the laser pointer of intent all the way down to invoking of an action, let's talk about this. Detecting intent. The Atlas reasoning engine behind the scenes starts by identifying the intent of the user's conversation. I'm asking about an error code on my Series i3 robot. That's a starting point. It'll then be able to look further. Processing. How does it select the right topic? It determines the task at hand or topic, and I'm doing air quotes like you can see me, and pairs it with the necessary actions and instructions to then go and say, based on those inputs, Atlas creates a plan tailored to the user's needs and executes it, hopefully seamlessly. But there might have to be a back and forth. And then finally, how do we execute it? Atlas is going to perform the next. All right, so Agentforce with the Atlas reasoning engine is going to perform the necessary actions directly within the Salesforce platform. It could be in sales, marketing. Marketing would have to be an embedded, non-embedded process. Could be service, could be commerce, could be externally. But how is it going to leverage those topics, instructions, and actions? Great, that's that piece. But what is this memory thing on the right-hand side? So if you guys haven't spent a ton of time within the agentic architecture and the agentic world, even within Salesforce or outside of Salesforce, we have to understand what memory means for these agents. So agents have both a short-term and a long-term memory. Short-term memory, and basically it enables it to reflect on real-time events or what's happening in the flow of the conversation. Long-term memory says, how much can it learn from historical data and metadata, or how long back in the conversation can you leverage it? If you've used GPT, either ChatGPT, Anthropic, etc., you'll realize as you build a very complex prompt and then work with an agent and talk with them back and forth, there's a memory component of it. It can remember the initial piece that you talked about and update the next side of it. That's what we're talking about here. The whole point of that is to ensure accuracy, reduce hallucinations, and hopefully help in an AI-driven workflow. So great. Now comes the bottom part, which I think, and where Timo and I hinted a little bit, where it's most important. What's Data Cloud's role? So it plays a crucial role in supporting RAG, so that retrieval augmented generation, with semantic searching. So not only can it do this with structured data and unstructured data that lives within Data Cloud, but it also can leverage data that can be live queried in from the zero copy architecture, from Azure, from Snowflake, etc. But also,
or a PDF or
there
an
you go,
email.
Timo. Yep, it doesn't have to be as complicated as zero copy. It can be simpler. And then how does it pivotal for unlocking that real-time actual insights and data? I think it's absolutely pivotal. Pivotal. Need my coffee.
Yeah.
And then we look
Maybe I
at
can
ensemble RAG
put you in
and go
for a
back up.
marketing use case in this case. So let's say
Yeah, go
that
for
you
it.
have, old sales material that you want to use to provide context. If that's in, let's say, PDF files or PowerPoints that you can turn into PDFs or old email messages even, then you can use RAG to, use that as point of reference. So you can actually have Agentforce scan through those PDF files for nuggets of wisdom. That's how retrieval augmented generation helps you out.
That's a very good example, Tino. And so I think this is a high-level diagram to explain how Atlas and the reasoning engine and RAG work together and why Data Cloud does play a pivotal role. We can go a couple steps further, but I also think the presentation, if we need to go into this, maybe we can leave this as a leave behind for folks. But we've done a little bit of details on what RAG means and another detail for how do we get relevant knowledge from those prompts into the actual agent. And I'll do it really, really quickly. So the left-hand side, there's a 1, 2, and 3 at a high level. What this means is, and Timo was already explaining it, is RAG retrieves information from your knowledge source containing structured and unstructured content. Great. What does it do then? It augments the prompt for combing this information with the original prompt, which, by the way, go look at the Agentforce Decoded series on YouTube right now. They go through a lot of really good content along this. So then number 3 in that step is the LLM is instructed by the prompt and it generates a response. Very simple. Now, not so simple behind the scenes, but simple from a diagram perspective. The right-hand image is at runtime, those prompt templates are pulling relevant information from your library to ground the prompts or ground the LLM prompts, which is going to result in more accurate, hopefully, responses. And this is a 5-step process. So retrievers within Data Cloud are going to be invoked to get that dynamic query. And if you don't know what retrievers are, we can provide some details in the next session as we go to the 102 and 103. Query is vectorized, which means it's basically converted to numeric representations. And that vectorization enables search to find what we call semantic matches in the index, which hopefully is already vectorized. And then number 3 in that process is the query retrieves the relevant content from the index data in the search index. 4, the prompt is populated with the information. And then 5, the prompt is submitted. Great. Hopefully that makes a little bit more sense. We're triple clicking into things. So then finally, if we're going to actually provide relevant business knowledge to agents, one of the out-of-the-box components is the answer questions with knowledge. Hot take from Jacob, and Timo does not have to agree with me on this one, is I haven't seen a lot of the standard actions work to exact needs for enterprise businesses, but in medium or small organizations, it very well could, but it gives you a starting point. of not only what could be actioned and run, but also the retrievers are the biggest component, in my opinion, within Data Cloud. That is a very big value add between Data Cloud and Agentforce. But I don't want to belabor this point because I want to go into the last section with Timo. But Timo, anything I missed in the speed run of RAG
No,
and
I
giving
think
knowledge?
by now I think everybody should be comfortably overwhelmed with all these nice industry words like embedding and so forth.
And if you feel overwhelmed,
Chunking, that's my
yeah,
favorite one.
yeah, if you feel overwhelmed, you guys can always ask us in the community or start doing some research on it. It's quite an interesting topic, but I'm also a nerd. So, all right. So the next
We're all
section is,
nerds here, Jacob.
I meant it in the most positive manner of how I said. So let's hit on this, and then I do want to get to Timo's section on coping with imperfect data because I think that is one of the most interesting ones here. So how do we set up Data Cloud in a smart way? Hint, hint, I'm going to go back to the diagram. So when we're thinking of all of these different features and manners and mechanisms ingesting data and getting data out of Data Cloud or into other systems via egress methods, we need to focus in that middle. So I'll pull out the soapbox for 1 second. There's been a lot of confusion out in the market, not purposely done. I think the technology is just moving way too quickly for everyone to keep up. Is Data Cloud needed for Agentforce? I think the take here is yes in the back end. And we had talked about it a little bit. If you don't leverage Data Cloud, you're not going to get the audit trail information, and you're not going to get all of the fancy fun things that we can do with structured data and what we just talked about. There's a reason why we mentioned it in the presentation. But can you move forward with Agentforce without Data Cloud? Yes, you can. How would you be using the information for an agent? You'd be leveraging it within your own Salesforce org, other orgs itself that are connected to Agentforce, or looking externally via Apex. And again, long prompts that are going to look at external areas. You have to be very careful on that construction, and it can get very unscalable quickly. So let's focus again in the middle area. If we want to leverage the platform to the best of its ability between Data Cloud and Agentforce, you have to understand how to use Data Cloud and how to set it up in the right way. I'm not going to run through all of the pieces. Please go look back at JB's sessions and pieces on Data Cloud. There was a great series that she did on that with all of the fantastic speakers. But you need to be able to understand that tech, especially as it'll be the underpinning of everything moving forward. So let's talk about how do we construct a proper Data Cloud foundation. So I'll spend like 2 or 3 minutes on this team and then hand it over to you. So how I look at setting up an organization for success with Data Cloud, I think it's critical to treat it as an enterprise initiative, not just another product in your technology stack. Data Cloud is the foundation for unifying and activating enterprise data within Salesforce's four walls. I'm sure someone's like, well, Jake, that's not right. Yes, there are plenty of pieces outside of where you don't need to use Data Cloud or where external systems can be leveraged. But if you embed Data Cloud into these processes, you'll see that Salesforce starts to hum and starts to work in a much more efficient fashion. So strategic vision, hopefully everyone understands it. You cannot start into an enterprise initiative or implementing a technology, regardless if it's Salesforce or another technology stacks, without understanding what you want to do. I think a favorite saying of mine is you need to measure thrice before you cut once. And I think there's also been other individuals in the ecosystem have said up to measuring 8 times before you cut once in Salesforce Data Cloud. Either way, the key component there is what do you want to do? Because Data Cloud is not just about storing data, it's about unlocking actual business value with the data. And how crucial is it for accountability and enterprise alignment, and who will leverage the information? Speaking of that enterprise alignment, how are we constructing a data governance framework, an organizational-wide data strategy? Because Data Cloud is one piece of this, especially if there's individuals on this call who have multiple components of the technology stack within Salesforce, Data Cloud, Agentforce, Marketing Cloud, Commerce Cloud. You better understand how data enters and moves and leaves these systems. And it's best to have a framework in place, because to Timo's point that he'll get to in a few minutes, yes, you don't need very perfect data, but you better understand what data is needed for a specific use case in Agentforce and if it's accurate and reliable. Does it scale? I don't think I need to talk about this in heavy terms. Is how are we going to make sure the architecture scales for not just a first use case or a second use case, but how Data Cloud can leverage into the 5th use case, the 10th use case. That's where I see a lot of people trip up. From an orchestration activation perspective, I think of this as building module reusable templates. Now, whatever Salesforce technology or feature term you want to use there, segments, calculated insights, waterfall segments, generative segments, doesn't matter. At the end of the day, we need to understand, how is it going to integrate and scale? How is it going to push the right information into Marketing Cloud for a journey? How is it going to push the right information as the next best action component or engagement component in CRM, to then eventually have a handoff between sales and marketing to make sure that they're working together. And finally, without any good presentation from a consultant, if we think of it as people, if we look at the 4 pillars of an implementation of people, process, data, and technology, the pieces that never really get talked about, or they're the afterthoughts, is people and process. With generative AI, this is the biggest piece. You're introducing items into people's workflows or day of their life, where some of them are going to be very hesitant of the tech. So how are we looking at bridging the gap between, from a data cloud perspective, data producers and data consumers, and for Agentforce itself, how are they going to actually leverage this technology in a manner that helps them on a day-to-day basis? So again, ultimately, you got to treat data cloud as an enterprise initiative, and it's a building block of the capability of implementing Agentforce. So I'll pull the soapbox away, hand the mic back over virtually to Timo to walk through some very cool stuff about imperfect data. Timo, back to you.
Thank you, Jacob. Yeah, let's dive in. We have only a few minutes left. Always good to have a quote at the end of a session, and this happens to be my favorite data quality quote. Comes from this gentleman called Charles Babbage. And the cool thing is that it's from the 19th century. So I find it comforting that these data quality issues are nothing new. And what Charles basically says, that even if you have imperfect data, it's better than having no data. So let's dive in to some misconceptions that I hear quite often. One is that basically customers and consultants alike say that, okay, we shouldn't go into Agentforce before fixing your data. Our data is too bad. We cannot use AI because it starts hallucinating and doing weird shit. Sorry. Pardon my French.
This is a family program, Timo.
Sorry. Yeah, let's go forward before I do any more damage. But anyway, what can we do with bad data if we use Agentforce? That's how I like to look at it. First off, I mean, you're running essentially a fully trained large language model in the background. If it's Anthropic, if it's ChatGPT, if it's something else, it's running in the background, but it's always complemented by the Einstein trust layer. So even if you're just using LLM without any additional context, it's still better than, logging into ChatGPT and just asking stuff from the user interface there. So, I mean, by default, it's going to be better than that. The next thing is that with Data Cloud's vector database that basically Jacob covered in the RAG section, you get agents that are agents are allowed to use insights from, let's say, a PDF file or an email message or a document. So the data doesn't have to be stored in your Sales Cloud, Service Cloud. It can actually be stored in, let's say, a PDF file that has instructions, let's say, how to manage case processes the right way in your company. And that can be used to provide additional context to the agent. Then, I mean, one thing is that it's already great if you can identify that you have issues with your data. It's even better if you know which data pieces are unreliable, because then you can instruct, you can build guardrails that basically work around that data. It can work in a way that the agent actually checks in with you that I'm not 100% sure if this is the right answer. So please bear with me. Please always check that this is the case. And if there's a conflict between two different data sets, or something like that, then you can have the agent, flag those issues as they respond to your user prompts. And I mean, we've been building complex flows and Apex code for, decades now. Well, not for Flow, but for Apex. And
For
I mean, that
millennia.
uses, yeah, it feels like it, doesn't it? But I mean, those rely on the imperfect data as well. And I mean, here we're also using Flow and Apex, but we're going to use them to help us sort of move around that imperfect data. So, using flows to get like approvals before an agent acts on imperfect data. So if you know that the data is not good, then maybe you shouldn't have it work as fully autonomous, but have this sort of approval step before it starts taking actions, just as an idea.
Checks and balances
Yeah.
are good.
Yeah. Next one, number 2. So Agentforce only works if your data is in Salesforce. And this is something that we already covered in Jacob's session, but I want to stress it here as well. So let's move on to this next slide. Thank you. One thing is Data Cloud zero copy integration. So you can use the data sharing feature of Data Cloud to pull in insights from a third-party data lake. So it's the bring your own data lake feature. What is it? BYOL. That you can use, for example, data that's stored in Snowflake or Azure Data Lake or Google Cloud Platform, and then have the agent fetch those insights in real time, basically with the Data Clouds feature. So that's always the preferred way, rather than bringing data in and replicating the data model and basically building tons of additional architecture just to get data available for some feature. And then we have the RAG. Let's not go too deep into that anymore because we've already covered it several times. And then, of course, we can use Flow and Apex. And you saw it actually in action in the example email accessibility agent as well, that you can have the agent use a Flow action to call an API integration, or you can use it with an Apex class to do the same.
Yeah,
And
and I think
then we have, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to double click into that third one for just a second. So, I mean, I think everyone needs to understand, because you're probably going to get that question, whether you're in a consultancy or whether you're working with clients, is how do I leverage processes where an organization is already going through a workflow process in another AI tool? Core AI is an example, or other tools out there. And how do we make sure that now we're getting into an agentic architecture where an AI process working in core AI can then trigger or provide additional details into the Agentforce piece within Salesforce's four walls? This is where the third bucket falls. It's where this stuff is going to get really interesting, in my opinion, in the next 4 or 6 months. And we're going to start to see agentic architecture actually come to fruition. So sorry, team, I just wanted to add that last piece in.
Yeah, and I'm looking at it a bit scared as well, that if we start building these micro flows for agents and our orgs get stuffed with these new kinds of flows. So it's going to be interesting in terms of architecture as well, how it goes. Anyway, the final sort of misconception here is that you actually need to fully implement Data Cloud to run Agentforce. And this one is a bit interesting thing, because let's go to the next slide. Data Cloud is used behind the scenes to run the Einstein Trust Layer. It's used for audit logging and data processing, and for RAG specifically. But you don't actually need to do a full implementation of Data Cloud. You basically need to just put the light switch on and have it provisioned in your org and basically have it working there. But you don't need to configure it fully. You don't need to set up any data model objects or relations or whatever, provided that you have what you need to run the agents inside Salesforce platform. So if you have a very mature Salesforce org, but you're not using Data Cloud, but you have knowledge articles, you have data inside Service Cloud, Sales Cloud, Commerce Cloud, etc. Nothing is basically stopping you from building your first agent. But I would still suggest you start implementing Data Cloud, start implementing data governance frameworks, and building a plan to combine additional data sets, bringing those third-party data lakes accessible via the zero-copy architecture, etc. But I mean, you don't have to wait for all these things to happen before you get started, but you can actually get started with the low-hanging fruits without Data Cloud first.
I think my favorite mantra that I like to use, Timo, and you might use it too, is think big but start small. In one of the
Yeah.
biggest items here with Data Cloud and Agentforce, is we've belabored the point here, and I know we're right at about time, is yes, here's your misconception demystified by Timo and Jacob. No, you don't need to do it, but if you're getting the SKUs behind the scenes and you're getting access to Data Cloud, wouldn't you want to understand how to leverage it for the next use case? That's my teasing question as you look at this in the future. But sorry, Timo, not to double click
Yeah, I
anything you were
mean,
already talking about.
that's pretty much spot on. Don't let
Yeah.
thing like Data Cloud implementation missing stop you from testing out Agentforce. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Good. I think we have covered basically everything we have for today.
Yes. So everyone, thank you for your time. I don't know, we have about 1 minute. If there's any burning question that comes to mind that someone wants to either ask us in the chat, or if not, please ask them in the Ask Me Anything documents, which JB, you want to hand the mic back to you for the end?
Thank you both for the wonderful session and the great teamwork.
I
And
just want to
thanks
say,
to Mike.
can we give it up for Jacob and Timo, everyone? Can we see some reactions in the chat? Because I don't know about you, I was blown away. Like this session was so informative. I know we all learned a lot. And if this is just the first day, imagine all the wealth of information that you all are going to get the remaining of the series. So that is why I think at the start, JB, you said, please register for the remaining series. Share this with your colleagues. This is a series like no other. As you can tell, none of this was scripted. Timo and Jacob put their heart into ensuring that you all had all of the information. But also what I loved is the fact that there were other folks in the chat also answering questions. So I appreciate the collaborativeness in this group. And then, so that's sorry, JB, to interrupt. I was just pumped and excited about this session. So let me hand it over to you to wrap this up.
I can't agree more. It is a wonderful session and a great first session to start with. I'm excited as well, and I'm going to go back and check the recording and upload it at the earliest possible. So anybody wants to go and rewatch it, or if you missed any piece of the session, you can go back and check it again. So we will continue this. Stay tuned. Make sure that you register to all the sessions. And there are some questions about the swag as well. So make sure that you attend all the sessions to be qualified for the swag. We will do some contest or some raffle at the end of the series.
And don't forget to
Any
also
question?
share it on social. I think a lot of you were asking, will this session be recorded? Yes. Please join the Slack channel. Please use some of the hashtags we mentioned earlier. We will be actively online, helping you all understand conceptually everything there is to know about Agentforce. So we just truly appreciate everyone for participating and for joining.
Make sure you
Thank you all.
tag us as well.
Thank you.
Any questions? And thank you, Jacob and Timo. And any questions, please post them on the Slack channel. And I don't think we have any other questions. We can call it a wrap then.
Go
And
forth
Thank
and
you.
build some agents.
See you
See you
on
all
Thursday.
soon.
Yeah.
See you on Thursday for
See you.
day 2.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
See you all. Bye.
Bye, everyone.